All right, everyone, welcome back to the Dead Pundits Society. Today, as a homage to the Champions League matches that just concluded yesterday, we're gonna do something a little bit different. We've both compiled a top 10 list of what we consider to be the greatest shocks in Champions League history. Now, obviously, that's quite a broad definition, broad category. So I think we'll have some interesting contenders in here. But Jake, why don't you kick us off here?
Yeah, this was an interesting one. And before we get started, I did want to give an honorable mention. I set my list on a top 10, but my number 11 and coming in hot as my honorable mention is 25-26 Bodo Glimt. We could see them go on to do great things. That's my just outside of it. I couldn't justify putting them in the top 10, but we've seen them recently beat Inter convincingly 3-1 and 2-1, and then winning against City before that, kind of underdog story. So outside of Chelsea, they're the ones I'm rooting for, and they were my honorable mention.
Yeah, no, that's
I,
definitely a good one.
and I figure we're gonna have some overlap here in general with our picks for sure, because there's not that many different seasons and teams to choose from. Um, it'll be interesting to mention where we put each of our teams, but I'll kick us off. My number 9 and 10, I'm gonna kind of do them as a pairing because I didn't really. I guess I'll just give my 10 first. My number 10 was Marseille 1993. That's an OG throwback. They won against Milan in the finals. They were the only French team to win the what's now called the Champions League until PSG did it last year. They beat a dominant Milan side, kind of ended Serie A European dominance in a way in that time. And yeah, so I chose them there. The only reason I don't have them higher is because, you know, the format was a lot different, right? Like really, really different. And I don't think it was quite as impressive or cool as the format is now because of
Yeah.
the two group.
I
Yeah.
don't, I don't, I don't want to say something that isn't correct, but didn't that Marseille team get banned for like match fixing or something like that? Like, I don't know. It's a
I
crazy start, I think, but, but I mean, they still kept the Champions League,
did
so like,
they?
fair enough, you know. But I'm pretty sure they were like in some massive scandal where I don't remember exactly the nature of it, but they did beat Milan. Jean-Pierre Papin scored the decisive goal, I'm pretty sure. So it was
Yeah,
a
he did.
pretty big moment for them, but. Yeah,
Oh
anyway,
wow, yeah, I don't remember that as well. Yeah, I didn't realize it was that bad. Damn. Okay, fair.
that's
Well, then I
that's
guess a
a,
little
a
bit of
good
an
start
asterisk
though
on
for
that
sure.
one. Should have
Anyway,
done more research on that one. But it's
for
a crazy,
me,
like I was looking at the list, so yeah.
yeah, that's true. For me, actually, my 10th is a match. So my match is Real Madrid 1, Sheriff Tiraspol 2. So that's from the 2021-2022
It's a
Champions
close.
League that
Yeah.
Real Madrid would eventually go on to win. I just remember watching it. Like it's back in the day when there were a lot of matches going on at the same time. I mean, still now, I guess, but the old format. And I used to just put on this game where you see all the matches flash up depending on when there's a goal. And I just remember Sheriff Tiraspol, I think it was their first or second match ever in the Champions League and playing at the Bernabeu, like with a coach like Ancelotti and them securing the win. That was a pretty big moment. I mean, Tiraspol is it's in Transnistria, so it's in this disputed territory within Moldova that has very strong Russian ties. And it was really a cool story, I think. And I mean, it wasn't very significant overall because in the end, Real Madrid ended up winning the Champions League, and I'm pretty sure Sheriff didn't even make it out of the group, or maybe they went to the Europa League that year. But that's why I have them as low as 10. But I think still that's it's not a bad shout. And then
No, that's a good shout.
no,
I thought about that match. That's a very good pull. That was
number
not so bad.
9, I also have a result. I'm not gonna have many, but I started off with those. That's why they're also low because I think they're less impactful than a run, for example. But I had Borussia Dortmund beating Real Madrid 4-1 in the second leg of the semifinal in 2013. Now, obviously, Borussia Dortmund were a pretty good team back then. They had Jurgen Klopp. They had come off winning two Bundesligas in a row and interrupting that Bayern Munich hegemony. But that Real Madrid team was really a team of world beaters under Jose Mourinho. They were going toe to toe with Barcelona in La Liga, and they were playing with a Champions League specialist who may or may not feature a couple other times on this list, at least from my side. And so for me, that 4-1 with four goals from Lewandowski as well was really a statement of intent. Dortmund showing themselves as a true contender to European glory or for European glory.
Mm.
Unfortunately, they did end up losing that final to Bayern Munich, but for me, it was one of the big shocks. I remember as a young kid living in Madrid, that was something that was very talked about in my class. So yeah.
That was a great time as well. I remember, that was a really fun period of football, especially when you had sort of the peak of the Messi Ronaldo dominance. Yeah, good pull. Very good pull. My number nine is one of my only other 90s pulls. I focused on runs again, and I put a big emphasis on the ones that I've seen in my lifetime, to be fair. But I put the 1997 Borussia Dortmund win. And this is because, again, they played one less game. There wasn't the round of 16 back then. It was a bit better than the format from when Marseille won, obviously. But they won against Auxerre in the quarterfinals, which isn't that crazy. But then they proceeded to beat Manchester United 1-0 in both games, home and away, in the semis. And that United team, was very good, very, very good, that late 90s United team. And then they beat Juventus 3-1 convincingly in the final. And I think that Juventus team, right, was very strong. If you look at the names that were all in that squad, it was quite an impressive 11. And yeah, I had to give them their flowers for that win.
Yeah, I mean that was still a time when Serie A was quite dominant. It was definitely the top league in those years, and so beating Juve in the final was quite a big achievement. So that's definitely a good pull. I also would say that that was the first year that it was the Champions League in the current format, where not only the winner goes into the competition, but also the at the time I think it was the second place team in the bigger leagues and third and some even, but before that it was obviously only the champion
Yeah.
of each domestic competition. So yeah, that's a great pull. At number eight, you might not remember this that well, but I've got Apoel Nicosia making the quarterfinals in 2011, 2012. So I mean, for me, it was just really an insane achievement. Such a small team, from Cyprus. I think maybe it wasn't their first time in the Champions League, but definitely one of their first times. And so to make the quarterfinals is definitely quite a big achievement. They ended up going out to Real Madrid, I think 8-2 on aggregate, so that bumped them down a little bit. But at the end of the day, making the quarterfinals for such a small country is a huge achievement, and I bumped them down a little bit as well because their group wasn't incredibly difficult. I think they had Zenit St. Petersburg, Shakhtar Donetsk, which looking at that group now is kind of crazy how those two teams were allowed to be in the same group. And I think the fourth team was Porto. So again, not the craziest of draws, but still for them to come out on top, and then they beat Lyon in the round of 16, which obviously is a team that's far superior both in terms of budget and players at the time. They had just made the Champions League semi-final 2 years before. They hadn't won the Liga in a while, but they went on that 7-year winning streak as well a few years prior to that. So for me, that was really a great achievement and an interesting one, even though the quarterfinals was the they didn't make it further in the quarters.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't really thought of them, but I do vaguely remember that. That wasn't something that I followed live when it was happening. I was still, maybe not as into football then as I was a few years after, but that's a very good pull and definitely an impressive run, so to speak. My number eight is rounding out my 90s picks. So they were the bottom, and it's a deep pull. It was one that I found when I did a bit more research. It was the Dynamo Kiev in 1998, 1999. I don't know if you know about this, but apparently it was pretty insane. They won against Real Madrid in the quarterfinals, beating them, sorry, drawing the first game 1-1 and then winning 2-0. And this is when Madrid was good. I mean, Madrid's always been good, but that was a strong Madrid team. And then sadly they lost in the semifinals, but they lost against Bayern Munich, who were obviously known for having a great team in the late 90s and being European, like a dominant European force, and they took Bayern very far. Their first game ending 3-3 and then losing the second leg or return leg 1-0. So I just wanted to give them a shout out for that. I don't know that much about it, but that's Shevchenko as well early on. I think he was still at Dynamo Kiev then, and he's making a name for himself. And yeah,
Oh, it's interesting. It's an interesting pull for sure. I wouldn't have. I mean, for me, I'm going to preface by saying that I've only included events that I remember as a follower, except for
which is very
one that
fair.
we'll get into later. But if we're looking at the whole spectrum of the Champions League, that's definitely one that's got to be up there. I mean, a team like Dynamo Kiev making the semifinals is pretty crazy stuff. Okay, the number seven. I know that you think it's a bit too soon, maybe, but I've actually got Bodo Glimt in number seven, man. I think what
Yeah,
they're
I was
doing
tempted
this
to
year is
put
really
them high as
spectacular.
well.
I mean, I know it's
Yeah,
people will accuse me of recency bias, but the thing is, you need to imagine the fact that Bodo's a village of about 50,000 people. So first of all, it's really small. Second of all, they're in the middle of their off season, or they just started their season again a few games ago. So they've played like 3 games or 4 games in the last 3 months. So like some people will say that gives them an advantage because they're maybe more rested, but it also gives them a disadvantage because they haven't been in that competitive spirit as much as the other teams in the
100%.
competition. And then third, like just looking at the teams they've faced so far. I mean, everyone is talking about that 0.3% stat that they had with 3 games to go in the group stage, but if we look at how that panned out, they tied away against Dortmund, they beat Man City at home, they beat Atletico Madrid away, and then they beat Inter Milan, who made the Champions League final last
That's
year, home and
insane.
away. So it's a pretty crazy run so far. And I mean, I read an article and it's quite interesting where they're saying that Bodo is essentially taking a bit of page from the Italian playbook of Catenaccio and just like hitting on the counter, and they're doing it really well. And so I think depending on who they draw, they could even go around further. In the round of 16, they're going to get either Man City or Sporting. Obviously, if they get Man City, I think it might be pretty challenging for them to progress to the quarters. But if they get Sporting Lisbon, I could see them going to the quarters, or at least having a decent chance at making it. So for me, Bodo, in their debut Champions League season as well, already making a splash, and for me, it's a top 10. I mean, when Bodo Glimt beat Roma 6-1 in 2021 in the Conference League, Jose Mourinho said that it would be a team that would hear a lot about in the future, and he turned out to be right with that one. So for me, they're number seven.
Fair enough. I considered putting them in my top 10. Like I said, I gave them an honorable mention. And knowing what I know now about Marseille, maybe I'd boot them from the list and put Bodo a bit higher. But I agree with what you said. It's funny because they didn't even win the Norwegian League last year. They finished second. So which is, still an impressive achievement, but we're talking about the second best Norwegian team doing as well as they've done and taking out the teams that they have. It's certainly very impressive. At number seven, I chose one that's, I don't want to say near and dear to my heart, but I remember this run very vividly. And I had to give it its props for that reason. And it's Monaco's 2016-2017 semifinal run. That's with a young Kylian Mbappé, very young. I think he was literally not even 18 years old yet when they started that run. He was, yeah, or maybe he was 18, but he was a kid in any case. This is uh, a crazy time period because you also have these players that go on to be very successful, right? You have your Fabinhos, your Bernardo Silvas. Um, I hate to bring him up because of how much of a disappointment he was at Chelsea, but Bakayoko was in that team. Radamel Falcao, who everyone considered was like past his prime, after his ACL injury. And the reason it stands out to me is because also of the nature of the games they won, right? They had that infamous City win where they went on away goals, with the first game losing 5-3 and then winning the second game 3-1 in the round of 16. And then just like that, boom, 6-6 on aggregate. They've taken out Manchester City, who are one of the favorites to win the whole thing. Then the game after that, they follow that up with a 6-3 on aggregate against Borussia Dortmund. And then they finally fall. They get beat, pretty convincingly by Juventus, 2-0, then 2-1, who go to the finals. But yeah, I love that team. I think the players that were on it were a lot of fun, and some of those games were just so entertaining. Those City games I remember really, really vividly. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I actually considered putting them in my list myself, but the thing is, like, I do think in terms of the teams they beat, I think there's been runs that were more impressive for me, at least. I do think
That's
that
fair.
City team wasn't the prime City team that we then went on to see. I mean, that year they came fourth in the league. You know, they weren't, or third, I think, but either way, it was the year they had Claudio Bravo in net. They were struggling a little bit. So, not to take away from it, but that was one of the detractors for me from putting them in the top 10, but nonetheless, a very good run with a group of players that ended up making football history. So nothing to say about that. And it's a great pick. Number six, you're not going to like it. Tottenham Hotspur, 2019 Champions League final.
Okay.
I think we're
The
talking about a
worst
Tottenham
Champions League
team.
final ever.
We're talking, yeah, but we're talking about a team that was past its prime. Pochettino got sacked only a few months after that final, but they made the Champions League final with some great games in between. That's why, like in this, when we're talking about Monaco, I was also considering them or Tottenham as a surprise. But for me, Tottenham just stands out a bit more because they also beat City on away goals. But for me, that win was more impressive because of how good City were in 2019 versus how good they were in 2016. Like I think 2019 was really one of the prime City teams. It just come off the Centurions season the year before, and they were, this all-conquering squad that Pep has created. And so for me, that win was really symbolic of yeah, like how the Champions League can spring these surprises sometimes. And obviously we have in the semifinal them going through in epic fashion against a surprise Ajax team. And yeah, for me that was a great run for them. The final was extremely poor. I mean, one of the most boring finals I've ever seen with a goal in the second minute by Mo Salah and then not much else. But for me, I've got to give them their flowers for making that final because it's a great achievement. I mean, they've achieved as much as Arsenal in Europe, just with that alone. So
The stray shot. No, I didn't consider them. It's fair. I don't want to be a hater, but I do kind of disagree that they were well, I guess they were technically past their Tottenham prime, right? I guess you could say that their prime would be what, 2015, 2016, maybe, 16, 17. But the thing is, they still had a very good squad. I mean, they had Harry Kane, they had Christian Eriksen, Vertonghen and Alderweireld, an aging Hugo Lloris, but yeah, they had, still a good squad, but I don't want to take away from that. That was an iconic win against Ajax in the semifinals, the Lucas Moura hat trick, I believe. I do
yeah,
remember watching that game. So that's fair. That's a good pull. That was your number
six.
six. Okay. My number six, I think you're not gonna like it, but it's for a reason because the top five are, pretty crazy. But number six, I've put Roma 2017, 2018. And I know they're surely on your list. I assume they are. I'm curious where you've ended up putting them, but I give them their flowers. I thought about putting them even higher. The reason I put them sixth, well, let me talk about, how impressive it was. I mean, they went against you guys. You guys went against Shakhtar Donetsk on away goals, which is kind of an uneventful or like not extremely exciting, right? Round of 16. But then the next two games are absolutely wild. The quarterfinals, that Barcelona game, Roma have risen from their ruins. I'm not a Roma fan, but I very, very clearly remember that the Costas Manolas header goal. And I just thought that was great. And again, this has nothing to do with Barcelona hating or anything. It's just that the fact that you guys lost that first game 4-1 and then proceeded to come back 3-0. I think the story was great. And even though you lost in the semifinals, I mean, those matches against Liverpool, my God, the first game 5-2, the second game 4-2, Roma almost clinched it. I was like, I had to give you guys credit for that. It was just insane. And I'm sure you'll speak to us about it a bit more,
Yeah,
but yeah.
I might have them on my list as well. We'll have to
But
see.
yeah, I had to put you high. It would have been cool for that team to make the finals. That Liverpool team, I mean, very, very good. Salah, unbelievable record-breaking season at the time and scoring against his old club. Um, yeah, but 7-6 on aggregate was just that's an insane result for a Champions League semifinal. So that whole
Yeah.
thing for entertainment, I had to put them sixth.
Yeah, for sure. So at number five, I've got same Champions League 2019. I've got Ajax's run to the semi-final. Now, I think if they had made the final, they had a very good chance of winning against Liverpool more than Spurs. And the thing is, you have to consider two things. Firstly, that team was insanely young. You had a 19-year-old Matthijs de Ligt. You had like a 22-year-old Frankie de Jong. You had other players like David Neres that have since gone on to do great things in Europe. You know, Onana in goal, Van de Beek, even though he's been kind of bad since he left Ajax. But so they had a really young squad that probably cost, I don't know, less than 20 million euros to assemble. And they made that semi-final. And the second thing is the way they made that semi-final. Like going in the round of 16 and beating that Real Madrid side in the way that they did, 4-1 at the Bernabeu. Like it was just an insane achievement. Then tying against Bayern Munich in the group stage and like really giving them a game. Then in the quarters, they come up against a Juventus side that just spent 117 million euros to bring Cristiano Ronaldo over from Real Madrid to win with the express desire of winning the Champions League. And not only do they beat them, but they beat them home. Oh no, they don't beat them home and away. They draw in Amsterdam, which means that in the return leg, they have to go to Turin and get a result. And they go to Turin and they get a 2-1 win to make the semifinals. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not an Ajax fan, but I was pretty heartbroken when they went out in the 93rd minute against Tottenham. I think all of us were a little bit. And yeah, for me, they're a top five shock in Champions League history because if you asked me at the beginning to predict it, I would have probably haven't have them going out in the groups.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said, and I'm gonna hop in here, skip my five for a second to say I had that IX team at fourth, for all of the same reasons you just described. And it's funny, you mentioned, the fact you're not an IX fan, but you were rooting for them. I definitely felt that in 2018, 2019. I feel like most people were kind of rooting for them. It's not just like the fact that it was an underdog story, it's the fact that, as you said, the players were so young. You've got this De Ligt, who's like the captain at 19 years old, riling up the fans, and the Ajax fans, are, yeah, I think they're great. Like you mentioned, the Real Madrid game, then beating Juventus, and even even though they eventually lost to Tottenham in the semifinals, it was super entertaining, right? It was insane moment for them to lose, and it was unfortunate. I think everyone that wasn't a Tottenham fan was rooting for them to make that final for sure. And yeah, I had them for all the same reasons. I got not much else to add, but I had them fourth. So with that, I'll give you my fifth pick. My fifth pick was one that, although I was too young to be watching football at the time. Um, just to clarify, I know a lot about this particular season of Champions League because I find it fascinating. And it was Deportivo La Coruña in 2003, 2004. I don't know if you have them on your list, but the only thing I'll say without any spoilers is there's a lot of representation for 03, 04 in my in my top five. Um, and it's because Juventus, they beat this very strong Juventus team in the round of 16, 1-0 and then 1-0. And then the Milan game, holy crap. I mean, I don't know, I'm sure you know about this, but just to give a bit of background context for the viewers, Deportivo arrives to play against Milan. Milan's the home team, I believe, in this first leg. They have an incredible start, scoring the first goal, and you're like, holy crap, they just beat Juventus. They're scoring very early on against Milan. Could this keep going? Milan proceed to end the game 4-1. Goals from Andrea Pirlo, uh, goals from, God, I can't remember some of the other ones, but it was big names. This is this AC Milan team that's absolutely stacked, right? Um, and then Deportivo La Coruña in their home game proceed to win 4-0, upsetting Milan. And this is just like an insane upset. You would not expect this at all. And I wish I watched that season like live as it was happening for many reasons, including all ones I'll mention later. But yeah, they're eventually taken out 1-0 by the eventual winners, Porto, who I'm sure are going to come up. And yeah, anyways, that was a long speech, but I had to give them their flowers.
No, that's a valid pull. I was definitely thinking about including them, but yeah, I feel like there are better options. But it's still it's a very good Very
Bro,
good
beating
poll.
Juventus and Milan
That's
in
true.
oh
That's
03,
true.
oh
That's not
04,
bad. And it was
that's
Milan
insane.
beating the two Champions League previous year Champions League finalists in a row, but then, going out to Porto, maybe they could have beaten them, right? So for me,
Oh,
number four, I've got one that's probably quite dear to your heart, and that's Chelsea winning the Champions League in 2012. So I've got them in fourth because I just think there are three better or three more shocking wins, at least from
that's
my point of
way
view.
too low.
But I think, yeah, Chelsea 2012, obviously, quite a big underdog story. In the semifinals, for example, they beat Barcelona, winning 1-0 at Stamford Bridge with about 30% possession of the ball. It was back in the years where Pep was just, in his prime at Barcelona, pretty much. And then in the return leg, Barcelona stormed out to a 2-0 lead. And by the halftime, I believe John Terry had also been sent off. So it was looking pretty drab for Chelsea's chances to make the final. And then, as we all know, there's that famous moment where Fernando Torres goes around Victor Valdez to score that 2-1 that brings Chelsea into the final. A Chelsea team that, by the way, had Roberto Di Matteo as their coach, a coach that didn't really do anything before that and has never really done anything since that Champions League run. And then they reached the Champions League final against Bayern Munich in the Allianz Arena. Bayern Munich pepper Chelsea for a great part of the game. I think I just checked the stats to confirm, but they end the match with 16 shots to two, I think. But Chelsea make it count with a Didier Drogba header late in the game. I believe Petr Cech saves a penalty as well on Arjen Robben in regulation time or maybe an extra
Yeah, he
time. I'm
does,
not
yeah.
sure. And so, they go to penalties, and then the rest is history. Didier Drogba scores the decisive penalty in his last match, ends up being his last match for Chelsea at least until his return later on. And Chelsea win that coveted Champions League that, they were not even that close to winning when they had better teams. I mean, 2008, they were pretty close to winning, of course, but this was like the team that maybe wasn't as strong as teams in prior years. And it was the one that ended up bringing them over the line. And then to add insult to injury, Tottenham Hotspur came fourth in the Premier League that year and didn't get a Champions League spot because Chelsea stole it from them. So, a pretty neat setup for the lads in blue.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak a lot more about that game further down the line and that run because I have it high up. I think fourth is if if Roma's on your list and they haven't come up yet, and this team is and Chelsea's 2012 is below, I just gonna say that that's blasphemous, and that has nothing to do with me being a Chelsea fan, but that's blasphemy. But no, I'll speak about that a bit later. You definitely gave the play-by-play well. There's even more context. I mean, I'm a Chelsea fan, so I'll be biased, but yeah, I'll get into that maybe a bit later. But as I mentioned, I had Ajax fourth, 2018, 2019 Ajax. Now, before we get into third place, it's important for the viewers to know that before we cut away there for a second, Pablo was getting cooked about his choice of putting Roma ahead of the Chelsea 2012 and proceeded to cut our call. And granted, the timer was running out, but we'll get more into that later down the line. In third place, with that said, my choice was Monaco 0304, which is a bit of a niche pull. Like I said, I put a lot of value in this specific Champions League run. It's because, I just think it was very impressive that a Monaco team that wasn't really anything that stood out that much made it as far as they did. I mean, they made it to the finals and then lost to Porto. But on that run, they went against Lokomotiv Moscow on away goals in the round of 16, which is, not the most eventful win. But then they proceed to beat Real Madrid with a comeback in the second leg. I mean, they lose the first game to Madrid 4-2, and everyone's thinking, okay, Real Madrid 03, 04, that's a pretty primed up team to go far in the Champions League. And Monaco comes back, wins the return leg 3-1, goes through on away goals. Um, and then they beat us in the semifinals. I got to give them their flowers. Granted, this Chelsea team is the one right pre Mourinho, the season before he arrives. So it's, still full of a lot of good players. Obviously, things really took off the next season, but I definitely say Chelsea were the favorites to win that game and to go through to the finals. but Monaco beat us 3-1 and then held it down 2-2 in the second leg. I think it's just very impressive performances back to back, especially with the team that didn't really have a lot of players. This is Didier Deschamps as coach, actually, I believe, which is kind of crazy. I mean, it's pretty much his only achievement outside of international coaching. This is his like main domestic coaching achievement. I think he was coaching, or am I tripping?
No, no, you're right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was right after he had recently ended his career. And then they lose to Porto in the finals, which, we'll get into Porto. I think it's pretty obvious we both have them in our list. But yeah, I just think that's quite an impressive achievement for Monaco, so I put them third.
No, that's fair. I mean, I think that's a great pull. I kind of decided to not include them for two main reasons. Well, first of all, something that's interesting is that one of the decisive goals against Real Madrid was scored by Fernando Morientes, who was actually on loan from Real Madrid to Monaco because he was deemed not good enough at Real Madrid. So
That's
that
hilarious.
was a
It's
great
amazing.
story. But the reason I didn't put them is because that was a pretty bad season for Real Madrid. They came fourth in La Liga. That year, Valencia won. I think Real Madrid came fourth, which is their worst result in the last like 30 years or something. So it wasn't a vintage Real Madrid side. Obviously, they still had the players. They had David Beckham. They had R9
Yeah.
with like half a knee, but still, like it was a team that underperformed that season in general. So, I mean, that's just, yeah, for me, kind of the
Well,
reason why I didn't
I'm
include them in
I'm going to
that.
debate you a bit there. I think that's unfair because we're talking about, even if they finish fourth, we're talking about a Real Madrid team with Iker Casillas, Roberto Carlos, Zinedine Zidane, Luis Figo, I mean, Carlos Sanchez, Cambiaso, like David Beckham was there then as well. Like, even if
Yeah.
you finish fourth, that team going up against Monaco, like realistically, with those players I've named, is there even a single player in the Monaco squad that you could name for them to beat Real
Probably a
Madrid
few.
and Chelsea?
Morientes. I mean, also Chelsea doesn't count. They were like before the money, so it wasn't really like, it was with Claudio
Before the
Ranieri.
money. This is once again
So it was
discounting. That's what do you mean? Semi-final of a Champions League and Chelsea was like a
no,
good
that's
team.
fair, but it
We had a
was
way
like
better squad than them.
no, I'm not negating that, but I'm just saying I think there's other teams. The other teams I have on the list for me were more impressive given their respective resources. So we'll get
I
into my
I don't
third.
know.
My
No, before we say
third,
that, I'm just saying because the squad, dude, I can name exactly three players, two of which were extremely young, which are
what,
Patrice
Ludovic
Evra and
Judy.
Emmanuel. No, but Patrice Evra and Emmanuel Adebayor who were both like
There, okay.
quite young at the time. And then Ludovic Judy, yeah, the main man, the captain of the team. Outside of that, I couldn't tell you a single player on that Monaco team. So for them to do what they did, I don't know. I think that's quite impressive.
No, that's fair. That's fair. But I mean, I also got cooked for like saying that you guys didn't know a single player on the Greece team that won the Euros in 2004. So apparently that
Yeah,
was not
that
a good
no,
argument. So according to the comments section on TikTok, at least. So for me, in third position, I've got a result in this case, which is Roma Barcelona 3-0. I mean, I think it's one of the greatest stories ever written in the Champions League. It's just objectively such a great moment for everyone. I think everyone was a little bit of a Roma fan that evening, and I'm going to tell you why I think it's more impressive for me than Chelsea winning the Champions League in 2012. So
I want
first
to
of all,
relegate Roma to
so
10th just
so
because
so
of this, because
first
you're not even
first of
choosing the
all,
run, you're
we have
choosing
to
one
yeah
game.
no but the run more generally, but like that game specifically. But let's
What?
let's talk about the run a little bit, right? So like Chelsea when they won the Champions League, maybe they weren't they're in their prime compared to a few years prior, but let's not get it wrong. That Chelsea team was stacked and it was very
Are
expensive.
you jo are you actually joking? Do you want to know who was on it? Do you want to know who started the
Yeah,
Champions League
Ryan
final for Chelsea
Bertrand
that
started.
year?
Okay,
Do
I
you want to
know.
actually like look at the squad and who
No,
was playing? Because that's like
the squad
also
was
why would you
good.
discount one to push the other one up? Just talk about
Anyway,
Roma,
I'm
bro.
not discounting one. I'm just saying, like, because you said it was blasphemous to put one above the other. So I'm telling you how I compare the two in my mind when making my list. So, first of all, the Chelsea team was still good. Like, if you made a top contenders list of the Champions League, they wouldn't be first, but there would be like top five or six, I think, that
No,
year.
no
Like they
way. I don't
like
believe no.
they'd just come off winning the league in 2010 and coming
It was
second in
2 years
2011,
prior.
and they came second in the Premier League in
And we
2011.
finished sixth that
So
season. No,
yeah, but I'm
anyways,
just saying, like
whatever. I'll
in
let you
general,
cook,
like
but
at the starting grid, they would probably be like fifth or sixth, I think, in that Champions League. I think that's pretty fair to say. So that's obviously it's a great achievement. It's one of the best achievements ever in the Champions League. But they were a pretty stacked team. Like, let's not pretend that they were like Leicester City, like coming out of nowhere, or like
And
Bodo
Roma
Glimt, right?
wasn't okay. Oh, so
Roma
you
was
think
not that
Roma's squad
stacked.
was bad?
I think if you make a list of contenders for that 2017-18 season, Roma's lucky to be in the top 10, maybe even top 15. Like they were a pretty good team. They had good players, but they just lost Mohamed Salah that summer to Liverpool. They lost some pretty key players because Monchi came in and decided that he wanted to dismantle Roma's club. And so we lost a lot of key players that year, brought in a lot of players that didn't perform. And we weren't really one of the favorites going into the tournament. Then getting into the tournament, we played in the group stage against Chelsea, a Chelsea team, mind you, that had won the Premier League the year before under Antonio Conte with
Yeah,
93
that's true.
points. So they
That was
dominated
a
the
great
Premier
team.
League. And Roma
That was a great
tied
team.
away
Yeah.
from home against them 3-3 with an Edin Dzeko screamer.
Wait, pause though. I thought you were talking about the specific Barcelona
No,
game,
no,
not
but
getting
like
into
I
the
need to give
run.
context to that Barcelona game. But
Then choose the
okay,
run. Like,
fine, fine. Let's change it to the run. That's fine. I'll change it to the run. So they tied 3-3 away from home against Chelsea, and then they beat them 3-0 at home. So pretty comprehensive dismantling of the Premier League champions of the previous season. I think we can both
dismantling.
agree with that, right? Then in the
No.
round of 16, they play Shakhtar Donetsk again, maybe not the most
You're
impressive
talking about
squad.
group stage games. This is the first time group stage games have
Yeah,
come
but the
up.
thing is,
Just
you have to
just so
give the
everyone knows,
context.
they haven't been mentioned a
No,
single
I know, but if you
time. But
compare like the value of the squad of that Chelsea team to the Roma team, the Chelsea team probably is worth like six times more or something like that,
oh yeah,
right?
we had won the league. You guys
Yeah,
hadn't won
yeah.
the
So
league
it's
in a
a
very
six
long
a
time,
six
so
X multiplier. Then in the round of 16, we play against Shakhtar Donetsk and beat them on away goals. Again, like not the most impressive thing, but still, Shakhtar was a team that was regularly making the quarterfinals in those years, so it's still a pretty important scalp to take. And then in the quarterfinals, oh my God, play against Barcelona, get demolished in the first like 4-1 away from home, with Dzeko scoring that away goal. And then comes the return leg, the 3-0 that prompted Peter Drury, I think it was, to say that Rome has risen from the ashes. Sixth minute, Edin Dzeko scores a really good goal. Daniele De Rossi with the penalty early in the second half, and then that glancing header from Manolas in the 80th minute to send the 60,000 fans of the Stadio Olimpico into ecstasy, and to send Roma into the semi-final. And that was against a Barcelona team that was one of the best teams in the world. They had Messi, they had Suarez, they had lost Neymar, granted, but they were still an incredible team. So Roma dispatched them on away goals as well. Then comes the semi-final, and the thing is, like Roma did lose that semi-final by one goal on aggregate, but that doesn't really tell the story of how that semi-final went. Because yeah, in the first game, I would say we were comprehensively outplayed by Liverpool, 5-2. It was a pretty tough result with Salah scoring a brace against his old club. In the second game, though, around the 50th, 60th minute, Trent Alexander-Arnold, yo,
I'm
you
listening to you. I'm just
interrupted
getting
the
a sweater.
flow. Anyway,
No, you
all right,
cook.
well, okay. In the second leg, at the Stadio Olimpico, Trent Alexander-Arnold handballed the ball in front of the goal line in like the 50th or 60th minute, right? And that was when Roma was like one or two goals up already. So if you give that penalty, and at the time with the rules, that would have also been a straight red card for Trent. I think that changes the tie completely. So Roma would have had a chance to go through against Liverpool. I think we were robbed. It was back in the day when VAR still wasn't in the Champions League. And so I think that Roma team could have even made a final potential. And then you never know. Like they probably would have lost against Real Madrid in the final, but like, we were close to making that. And so I think as like the squad to result ratio, that's a pretty insane achievement. And so honestly, I would say that for me, that does top the Chelsea victory, just because Chelsea was a really stacked
Well,
squad.
I heard a lot of ifs, buts, and maybes, and
There's only one
I
if,
don't
but,
do
and
if I
maybe.
don't do if buts or maybes. I do absolutes, and
No, I know, but there's
lo
only one if.
losing in the here's the thing. Here's the thing is I gave Roma a lot of respect. I know, like jokes aside. I mean, obviously there's a little bit of trolling going on, which is good. But jokes aside, I put them sixth. I think it was like an incredible achievement. But I don't think you can realistically put. Anyways, I'll get into Chelsea later, but I don't think you can realistically put a team that lost in the semifinals like ahead of the top two greatest upsets in Champions League.
But the thing is,
history
it was
vis-a-vis
an
winners.
upset, but Chelsea was still a good squad. Like if you were like Chelsea's
I'll
gonna
I'll
make the
get into
semi-final,
it.
that wouldn't have been a crazy take, at the beginning of the season. If you said
No, it
Roma,
was
if you
pretty.
said Roma was gonna make the semi, like I mean, the betting odds would probably be Chelsea would be like fifth or sixth, I would say. Well, I don't know because like I don't have the betting odds on me,
I
but
don't know, man.
the thing is,
I mean,
like it's not crazy. Like Roma's betting odds just to win that Barcelona game were 77 to 1. So
no, I mean that's a great sporting achievement. Yeah. Anyways, where were we? I'm getting lost in our list, but hopefully it's entertaining for
number
the
two.
viewers at least. We're at number two. Yeah. So wait, so you had Roma number two?
No, number three, I had them.
Okay, okay. Because I had Monaco number three with the yeah. All right. Well, my number two um is the Porto win in 2004. Yeah, yeah, react. You'll hear about it. And I went, to be fair, I think that's less of a bad take then I'll just say then I put Chelsea win in 2012 number one. And I think that's way less of a bad take than putting the Chelsea win. What was it? You put it like
Fourth.
fifth?
Fourth. That's pretty good.
So you put Roma third. So what are your top two? We can get into the second place first, but I assume we have some overlap, so we
Yeah,
might
so
as
my
well say
top
them.
two is Inter winning the Champions League in 2010. Like that was
But
such an
that's not an
insane achievement.
upset.
It was an
Yeah, but
upset.
that's
What do
not
you
an.
mean?
But
Like
I mean, it was an upset, but
Inter
like
had won the Champions League in 45 years at the time, and
but that
they
and I yeah, okay, fair. No, you had that number two or number one?
number two and then number one Porto. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
but
I had Porto second. Yeah. The, the thing with okay, what do we want to address first? I mean, I guess we can do Inter first since we both had Porto and we can get into that after just to make this more cohesive. Inter, the thing is, I actually really thought about it. You know how much I love that Inter team. Like, not even the Inter team. I love that season. Anything Jose Mourinho does, I'm always gonna root for. I just think that's not like I don't think of that as like I guess it is an underdog run, but I don't think of it as like the underdog run to the point I'd put it first or second. Does that make sense?
I mean, it makes sense, but like you need to think about the context as well. Like when Chelsea won the Champions League, they'd been knocking on the door for a few seasons. Like in 2008, they were in the final. They lost to Man United on penalties. John Terry missing that crucial penalty to give Chelsea the title.
No,
So
you're talking about something that happened 4 years
yeah, but
earlier.
I'm
It's
just
not even
saying that,
related
but
to
the thing is they've
Inter.
been knocking on the door. What I'm saying is they've been knocking on the door, right? Inter had not been knocking on the door. Inter had not made a Champions League final in like over 40 years and hadn't won the Champions League for 45 years. Like that was a once in a generation achievement. And
But they had an insane team in the 2000s as well. And like let's not act like Inter. Granted, this team I agree was technically past the prime of like those crazy Inter teams, but it's not like Inter was washed at any point. I mean, we're talking about a team with Eto, who comes over from Barcelona, Wesley Schneider, who has a historic season. I've heard you argue that he could have potentially won the Ballon d'Or that year. They've
yeah,
got
but it's still a
Zanetti,
shock because
Maicon, who was like insane right back at the time,
no, I know, but it's
Lucio.
still yeah, but it's still a
Uh,
shock because
It
Wesley
is a shock. I
Schneider
agree.
went to Inter as like a kind of reject from Real Madrid. So like if at the beginning of the 2009-2010 season you say that not only Inter would win the Champions League, but that they'd also win the treble with that, I think that many people would have told you that you're crazy. And I think that's more shocking than the Chelsea win personally, because the thing is Chelsea's squad was still
I
good.
don't
Like
think
yeah, you
so.
can talk about like Ryan Bertrand starting the Champions League final, but like other than that the team was pretty stacked. So I just think that for Inter to
So,
win the Champions League in the way that they did as well, like in the group stage, for example, they were 5 minutes away from being knocked out of the group stage against Dynamo Kiev, and they scored two goals in the last couple minutes. They knocked out a Chelsea team in the round of 16, winning home and away, a Chelsea team that won the Premier League that season pretty comprehensively against Man United of Sir Alex Ferguson, and the season where Drogba scored 29 league goals. And then, yeah, in the quarters, they beat CSK Moscow. Not that impressive. Probably it was pretty good for those guys to even make it there. Semi-final, they play against Barcelona, right? A Barcelona team that was a prime Barcelona team, 2009, 2010, even though compared to the Chelsea run, I don't really like, I think they're pretty similar Barcelona teams. Like, you could argue that one is slightly better than the other, but I would say that they're pretty similar, to be honest. And yeah, Inter wins 3-1 in the San Siro. Everyone expects Barcelona to turn that around in the new camp. Jose Mourinho's team puts on a defensive masterclass, one of the best defensive performances I've ever seen. And that happens with with 10 men because I think I don't remember who exactly from Inter, maybe it was Walter Samuel, but it might have been someone else, gets a red card pretty early. Oh no, it's Thiago Motta gets a red card pretty early into the second half. And so Inter defending against this all-conquering Barcelona team to hold on
But
for the 1-0. And then in the
but dude,
final,
yeah, go ahead.
no,
Yeah.
and then in the final they beat Bayern Munich comprehensively 2-0. It was a final they pretty much dominated from start to finish, and it
I
just was the cherry on the cake
yeah.
for that
I
team.
don't want to I don't want to take away from Inter. I think it's a great achievement. I guess I should have considered for this top 10. For this top 10, I really tried to go with, kind of like upsets. Maybe I lean towards underdogs, your Monaco's, your I mentioned Dynamo Kiev. For me, Inter Milan, man, is like such a big name. Like they had won. You're like mentioning all this stuff about them not winning the Champions League for like X amount of time, which is true. But keep in mind, before 2009, 2010, they won three back-to-back league titles in the Serie A. That's like the most conveniently omitted factor I've ever heard. They won 06, 07, 07, 08, 08, 09. They're literally the reigning three-time champion of the Serie A, the best team of that like period. Four. There you go. Goes even further. 05, 06, 06, 07, 07, 08, 08, 09. And then obviously 09, 10 when they win the treble. It's not like they're scrubs. They were one of the favorites to win the tournament. Outside of
No, they weren't one of the
Barcelona, bro,
favorites.
they
You
were
can't.
definitely one of the. Who was better? Realistically, I can name three teams: Barcelona, Real
Real
Madrid, and Bayern
Madrid
Munich.
and
That's
Chelsea.
it.
Chelsea had a better
Chelsea
squad
was
that
not,
season.
dude. Not like this is a team that won four. So you think a team that won four back-to-back league titles and then proceeded to win
Yeah,
a
but the thing
fifth
is like
was a
yeah,
less of a favorite when you who talk so highly about Serie A football in the 2000s, that
yeah,
undermines the
but
entire argument about Serie A
that statement
football in the
lacks a lot of yeah,
2000s.
but that statement lacks so much context. It's actually
What
crazy.
you omitted context in your entire thing. You're talking about
The
them
thing
like they're
is,
some scrub,
you
like
need
they're
to
some
give the
Leicester
context
team.
to the
They won
situation.
4 years in a row,
We need
bro.
to
They
give the
won the
viewers,
Serie
but
A
we need to
four
give the
seasons
viewers
in a
back home a
row.
bit of context, right? And the context is that two of those league titles were basically gift wrapped to Inter. Let me explain myself. In 2006, Italy was
Okay.
rocked by the betting scandal, right? Juventus was relegated, and Milan was given a 30-point deduction, and that's why Inter won the league. Inter finished about
But
15
how
points off. Then the next year, Milan had a 15-point deduction, and so that already put them out of contention to win the league. And Juve was in the second division, so league title pretty much wrapped up. Then
but
fine, the next 2 years they did win the league
But
organically.
is that not? But still, to be fair, and again, like I love this Milan team, but I just hate that you're comparing a team that won four. Like this is a period of Serie A history that we both recognize as being like great. Like the 2000s, we put a lot of emphasis on the 90s as well. Yes, granted, you can mention the Juve relegation thing and whatever, but that's still four league titles in a row. It's not like they're walking in as like, Bayer Leverkusen finishing third in Bundesliga hasn't won a league title in X amount of years. Like they're walking in as the third best, I'd say at the time, third best league in Europe. No, maybe at the time even higher. That was arguably higher, arguably better. Yeah, anyway, second or third best league in Europe, and they've won it four times in a row leading into that season. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but they
I
also
don't know,
they
man.
had a reputation for underperforming in the Champions League. Like it's just that was a known thing in Italian football. Inter were the chokers. So like for them to put that all behind them and beat this all-conquering Barcelona team, I mean it's a pretty insane achievement. And I think it's overlooked because in hindsight we're like, oh yeah, Milito and Schneider and this guy and that guy. But like at the time, those players weren't like world-class players when they signed for Inter. They became world-class while at
But
Inter. Like Esteban
but
Cambiasso
they
is
had a
not a
world-class
world-class
squad
player.
that won four titles in a row,
Yeah, but the
man.
thing
Like
is, again, the four
world-class
times in a row
players.
were more out of happenstance than out of actual quality vis-a-vis the
No.
rest of Europe. And so for me,
Four
yeah,
titles in a row can't be happenstance. Maybe one or two, but
well, two of
four
them
ti
were
league titles in a
happenstance, and then
row
by the
can't
time Juve
be
came up
can't
again, the
be.
other teams were so far behind that they just had like an insane head start. And then they brought in Jose Mourinho, one of the best Champions League managers of all time. And so
I
for me,
mean, I'm
it
not even
just
trying to like hate on that. That's less of a bad take than the Roma above the Chelsea one. I think like there's an argument to be made. I'm just trying to say there's context. And again, I'm not trying to like bog down on this, but I just fundamentally disagree that it's like such an upset in a way that you like that. Yes, I'd say Barcelona were definitely a favorite above them. They had won the league the year before that, just like they had with the
Yeah,
Chelsea
Man
United.
United was also a favorite.
Um,
They'd won three league titles in
bro,
a
I mean,
row coming up to that moment.
Manchester United, I mean, yeah, okay, yeah, that's fair. Okay, well then in that case, I'd say Barcelona, Man United. I mean, you can't discount Real Madrid, even though they, you know, lost to Lyon actually that year.
Yeah.
So yeah, they lost to Lyon that year
Yeah, but that's
actually. So
not like
not even I'm not even gonna count them.
you are gonna
And
count
then
them. Like they just choked. It's not like that doesn't discount how good they were. They finished the league season with
Bayern
96
Inter
points.
Milan is at worst the fourth best team that
No,
season.
I think
At
Chelsea
worst.
was better than them. I remember when they played Chelsea,
No.
I was a 10-year-old child, and like everyone was saying Chelsea's gonna absolutely destroy Inter Milan, and they
We
didn't.
were, I mean, to be fair, 09-10, I mean, again, a manager that we love, that's Ancelotti's Chelsea. That's a great
Yeah.
team. You know, that's fair. Maybe Chelsea's better, but then I'd say
So fifth.
Barcelona.
So they're the
Yeah,
fifth
but
best
at
team. So the
yeah,
same as
at worst.
Chelsea in
Yeah, but do you
2012.
think Chelsea was in fifth? Okay, all right, fine. Let's just get into it then. We'll keep Porto's your first, they're my second. We don't even need to talk about them. Like, let's just skip it because we both know how great they are. We can
Yeah,
pay
yeah,
an homage to
exactly.
them. We think how great it is. I've spoken a lot about that season, the
They put
03-04
Jose
Champions League
Mourinho on the
season.
map, changed football
In
forever.
my in my opinion, it might be like the greatest season of Champions League ever. Just all of
Yeah,
those things I
should have been
mentioned.
number
The,
one
the
probably, right?
Monaco, like all of the other upsets that I included in there, Deportivo. Yeah. Chelsea were not supposed to be there at all. Like you're like trying to exclude this context, make it sound like we're coming in like these heavy hitters. Andre Villas-Boas has a terrible start to the season. Andre Villas-Boas. A lot of people forget that Andre Villas-Boas even was a thing because he left to the Chinese league like a couple years later. Um, he's there. He's disappointing at best, unfortunately. He gets sacked halfway through the season because it's the brutal Roman Abramovich era. Roberto Di Matteo, who you're talking about, comes in, appointed as interim manager. Not only had he not established a name for himself, he had never even managed a Champions League knockout tie before. I'm pretty sure prior to that Chelsea season. So you've got a manager that's not even doesn't even know remotely the first thing about Champions League.
Yeah.
Then we can just get into, I'll take you match by match since you want to talk like match by match about about what happened. Chelsea goes up against Napoli, a good Napoli team. Napoli at this time's got Edinson Cavani, I mean Lavezzi. This is like a cult hero Napoli team. I think you would agree. This is like a famous, like a lot of Napoli players identify players from that squad. Sorry, a lot of Napoli fans identify players from that Napoli squad as like cult figures. And stop doing your little research in the
I mean, they can't,
background
the
for
Napoli
whatever it
team that
is.
came fifth, by the way. Like we're like so
Okay, he's doing
good.
his research in the background. Either way, we lose the first leg 3-1.
Yeah.
Really disappointing. At this point, there's all these questions. What's going to happen? Oh my gosh. Come back and win that second leg 4-1. You know how crazy that is with the infamous Morales goal, bro. We were like tying 1-1, rips a shot in the 92nd minute. I mean, it's just a madness. But apart from that, you go into Benfica. I'd say Benfica, we won pretty convincingly. 1-0 in the first one, 2-1 in the second game. That one can't talk too much about. I mean, Benfica were good, but nothing to write home about. Then we come up against Barcelona, which for context, 2011-2012 Barcelona, the season before, 2010-2011, they won the Champions League with Messi setting all sorts of ridiculous records. This is a Barcelona team with, I shouldn't even have to mention it, but a ridiculous squad. I mean, you've got your Xavis, your Iniestas, and whatnot. I mean, you've got a team. They had Pedro, who was crazy at the time. I think David Villa was still there, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this is a crazy Barcelona team. Won the Champions League the year before. That Barcelona team beat Bayer Leverkusen 10-2 in the round of 16. 10-2. The return leg being a 7-1 defeat. Thrashed them. They go up against Milan, by the way, who had gone through against Arsenal, two good teams at the time, 4-3. Barcelona beats Milan. They draw the first game, then beat Milan convincingly 3-1. And everyone at this point saying, okay, this Barcelona team, they're just going to go on to do it all. Chelsea then proceeds to eliminate the holders or the reigning champions in the most extreme way possible. I mean, they're the defending champions, widely considered at the time the greatest club of the modern era, coached by Pep Guardiola at their peak. We beat them 1-0 at Stamford Bridge. And then the 2-2 going through on aggregate Camp Nou. Fernando Torres, who had been signed to Chelsea for 60 million, who had been an enormous flop. To this day is one of Chelsea's biggest flops ever. Arguably, I mean, we put him in the F tier in our like the transfers list. I mean, you guys said he's arguably the worst January transfer like ever. You guys said that yourself. That was your own words.
Yeah.
Fernando Torres, despite all of that, goes on to score the upset goal. 60 million pounds have just been repaid. The last 18 months have just been forgotten. Like the most historic, one of the most historic goals in Champions League history. And this is all before the finals, man. We go up against Bayern Munich. That Bayern Munich team is ridiculous. I mean, you've got Manuel Neuer, you've got Franck Ribéry, you've got Arjen Robben, you've got, I don't even know who
Yeah,
else. Like,
Chelsea flop Arjen Robben.
he wasn't a flop. Arjen Robben was great at Chelsea. Anyways, I'm not going to get bogged down in your, whatever. Um, in your whatever. But Bastian Schweinsteiger, Thomas Muller, Tony Kroos, Philipp
Yeah.
Lahm, I mean, Mario Gomez. It's a ridiculous team. It's a ridiculous team. And this Chelsea team throughout has just been an underdog, been predicted to lose multiple times. It's like it's a complete upset run. We've got Basingwa starting at right back, by the way. That's
He's a
like
great
not a
player.
thing. Not a thing. John Obi Mikel, Ryan Bertrand starting at left wing, which I know you like kept trying to bring up. Ryan Bertrand wasn't even a left winger, man. That like wasn't his position. We were like so bare bones with our squad. Solomon Kalou, who everyone forgets. Actually, you're speaking of 2009, 2010. He was phenomenal that season, but kind of like a forgotten player, not a world-class player. Drogba. And then that final is played in Munich. In Munich. Bayern Munich is playing in their home stadium a Champions League final.
Yeah,
In their
I
home
mentioned
stadium,
that.
which you conveniently never mentioned
I
a
did
single
mention that.
time
I said
throughout
in the
this
Allianz
entire.
Arena.
Okay, well, still, it was glanced over, I feel like that's a pretty key aspect to the story. They're beating us. I mean, they're Bayern Munich. They're, doing their thing. Thomas Muller scores in the 83rd minute, celebrates like crazy. I mean, I remember the celebration falling on the ground. The players are jumping on him. The commentators were literally saying, "Oh, this is so sad. The Cinderella story had to come to a crashing end
I
at the
don't think
Allianz Arena, the
I don't
home
think they said it's the
champions."
Cinderella story.
It, the 88th minute. Corner taken, Drogba! Oh my God, Manuel Neuer gets a hand to it, flies into the top left. Drogba with the heroic header, Mr. Final, Mr. Big Game moment. In the 88th minute, 34-year-old Drogba, who quote unquote is past his prime, they get a penalty in extra time, as you mentioned, and check saves. Check saves! Insane. It was like this is like maybe arguably the single like one of the single greatest moments for a goalkeeper ever, by the way. And Robin had an insane chance, which I didn't even mention earlier in the game, where Czech deflected the shot into the goal, sorry, into the post with his legs. Anyways, and then we go to the penalties. Wow, David Luiz's penalty we didn't even mention. We miss our first penalty, by the way. Juan Mata misses. Philip Lahm buries it. David Luiz goes scores an insane penalty, one of the greatest penalties I've seen in my life to this day. I don't know if you've ever watched it, but flies into the top right corner. Anyways, Gomez scores, Neuer scores, then Lampard, Cole, Olic, and Schweinsteiger both have their shots stopped or missed, let's say. Drogba, everything resting on the king, the greatest striker in Chelsea's history, buries it. I mean, it's just an insane story. There you go. There's the
No, it's a
yap.
great story. I mean, I don't think it's the number one, not even close, but it's a great story. I mean, I had it at number four, for a reason. I think it was a great run. The Chelsea again, that Chelsea squad was good though. Like it wasn't like just some random like group of
Bro,
ragtag players that like were put together.
yes, but the team they faced in the final had the home advantage, had more
Yeah.
chances, took the lead late, missed a penalty in extra time. Apart
Yeah.
from that, Chelsea's squad redefined, in my opinion, genuinely what it would look like to like be a Champions League winner. Before that, it was often about like dominating, with the exception of maybe Porto. Chelsea
And
were
Inter.
outpossessed in almost no, but Chelsea were outpossessed in almost every single like major game. And we faced stronger teams in almost like every knockout round. And it was relying on last ditch defending, mentality, moments. I mean, for
Yeah,
me,
but
it's just
also
such an underdog.
when making my list, I didn't consider like a shock. If it's something that happens like within a match, I didn't consider that because, for example, otherwise number one should be Man United winning the Champions League in 1999 because they scored 2 goals in added on time. So
No, but this
like
is about upsets and shocks. I mean,
yeah,
that
yeah,
wasn't
but for
like
me, it's like
but
before the match or before the tournament, like how surprising is their performance vis-a-vis that, right? So again, it was a great achievement, but you kind of conveniently gloss over the fact that Bayern Munich lost the Bundesliga for 2 years in a row at that point against Borussia
I mean,
Dortmund.
I
So
mean,
like
yeah. And then how
they
many
came
Bundesligas did they
yeah,
proceed to win after that?
at
How
that
many
moment,
Bundesligas and
right?
how many Champions League did they proceed to win like
Well,
after
yeah, but
that?
that's not relevant because that happened after. You have to
That's
think about
not
what happened
relevant.
before. Like the players weren't in
Okay,
their
okay.
prime yet, you know? Like Tony
They
Kroos was like
weren't
a
in their
young,
prime. So prime robbery, who like 2013
yeah,
won
but
the
that was
Champions
like
League
a
the
year
season after they
after. In
lost to us.
2012, they were
Okay,
still
this is
like
just. I
getting used
mean,
to playing with
I'm not
each
even gonna
other.
address that. That's
Then
grasping at
also
straws. So I'm not even gonna
Tony Kroos
entertain that.
was a young 22-year-old player, so still not even near his prime. Thomas Muller, who like fell on the floor celebrating, was only 23. So like the players were really young, you know, like
Thomas
you
Muller at
keep
23
that in
was
mind.
ridiculous. In
Yeah.
2010, he was like one of the top. Wasn't he the top goal scorer at the World Cup in
Yeah, but that
2010?
was with Germany, like not with
Oh
Bayern
yeah,
Munich,
okay,
like
that was with
FIFA.
Germany. This is
So the
just.
thing
I mean,
is,
you're grasping at
like
straws here,
again,
right?
it's a great achievement, but like I don't think it even gets close to Porto winning in 2004. Like I think putting Chelsea, I mean, I could have an argument with it being second, like that's fine with me, even though I think it should be lower because I do think they're like top five, six favorites for the Champions League that year. But like, how can you justify putting it ahead of Porto? I mean, Porto probably wouldn't have even been in the top half of the
the
favorites that season.
The only reason, yeah, that's true. And again, I'll tell you why. The only reason I have it above Porto, I mean, two reasons. The first one is tribalism. I'm a Chelsea fan. I'm going to rate the achievement highly. The second reason is genuinely because of the teams that were left. Look at the semifinals when Porto played. And not trying to take away. I spoke so highly about them, but you had upset after upset. I mean, you've got Chelsea, yeah. Which, by the way, this helps my argument. You were shitting on that Chelsea team all the time earlier. So let's say a trash Chelsea team, right?
Yeah,
Monaco, Porto, and Deportivo. That's the semifinals. Okay, that's the
a solid
semifinals
team.
of that. That's the semifinals of that round. The semifinals of Chelsea's one was Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Chelsea, and Barcelona. Like
Yeah.
the difference in quality of what was left. I
But
just think
also the
that
difference in quality between Chelsea and Porto was insane. I mean, again, like I'm not going to take this argument that Chelsea were like a bunch of scrubs. Like they won the league 2 years prior to that, and like the squad was by and large the same. They still had Frank Lampard, they still had Didier Drogba,
that's no.
they still had John Terry, even though he didn't play in the final. They still had Petr Cech. They still had Malouda, I think. I don't know if he was still there, but like he was also a pretty sick
He
player.
was there. He played in the final, but
Forgotten
he
player.
wasn't anything crazy. I mean,
He was a really good player though, underrated. Like, can you
yeah, I
name
agree with that.
like the Porto squad? Yeah, sure. They had like Ricardo Carvalho. They had I don't know some other players for sure. But it was just not like even close to the level of that Chelsea team. And I understand like that being a Chelsea fan, it's near and dear to your heart. Like that's completely fine. But I think that objectively that if you ask 9 out of 10 people on the street, 10 people on the street, 9 out of 10 people will choose the Porto run, and the 10th one is probably a Chelsea fan.
I mean, nah, it's. I mean, they had that team's less good. By the way, Jose Bozing was in both of these teams, which is
Yeah,
insane. Let's just bring
go.
that
Yeah.
up.
But he was in
That's
his prime at Chelsea, not
no.
at Porto.
What are you talking about? He was old, man. He was like
He was
he
like
was
30.
past. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's starting as he was playing right back, bro. He normally played. I mean, I guess yeah, he played right back, but still, like yeah. Anyways, that Porto team did have good players. It definitely had a weaker squad. I would never be crazy and say anything wild. I mean, they had Carvalho, Deco, Bruno Moraes,
And
but
also, it was more iconic, like that clip of Jose Mourinho running on the touchline in Old Trafford after scoring a goal
is
against
it more
Manchester
iconic
United. Crazy.
than Didier Drogba running, holding the trophy like this, running, showing it to all of the Bayern Munich fans in their home stadium? No, definitely not. Or wearing it
I
as a
think
crown? No, man.
pretty
I
similar,
don't
I
I don't I
think,
don't know about
I
that
would
one.
say. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, pretty contentious at the end. I mean, Porto, we don't really need to go through it. For me, it's obviously the best ever Champions League run. Second maybe for some people, but
I put it
arguably for
second.
sure
Yeah.
number one. Put Jose Mourinho on the map, change football a lot more than the Chelsea
You
game
could
changed
you could
football.
put it You could put it first. Sorry to cut you off. You could put it first. I wouldn't hate putting Chelsea second and Porto first, but the difference between those two is a lot smaller than the difference between Chelsea and Roma, is all I'm
Yeah, but
gonna
the thing is,
say.
the
So the
Roma,
fact
like,
that you put them
yeah,
ahead is
yeah, we have to
blasphemous.
just consider the
We
strength
glossed
of the
over that fact.
squad.
You
Yeah, we
got
have to.
cooked
No,
off
no,
the air.
I didn't really get cooked off the air because the thing is, like, you still don't. My argument is that relative to how good the squad was compared to the rest of Europe, Roma performed better than that Chelsea team. You have to think about it in
You
account
guys
the
had a
Chelsea
good
side,
squad in 2017, 2018.
but
I
not
mean,
really. I mean,
Manolas
it was
was
good,
very
but it was
good.
like, yeah,
You had Alisson Becker who was great.
yeah. But again, these are
Um,
players that we signed for next.
Kolarov,
We signed, yeah. Kolarov was okay.
Raja Nainggolan, who you love, Raja
A washed
Nainggolan,
Kolarov. He was washed. And also the thing is, you need to keep in mind the fact that
washed.
Roma signed these players for next to no money, right? Like Chelsea, 50 million for Fernando Torres, like 40 million for this guy, like 30 million for this
Fernando
guy.
Torres, like you said, is one of
But
the biggest flops in
no,
history.
I
To
know,
pick
but
an
like you still,
argument,
but
you
the thing
said
is like
like
you still have to like look at the money spent relative to the success, right? Like Roma spent next to no money, made a Champions League semi-final, was
made a
close to
Champions League
making a
semifinal and
final as
lost. You know what the
well.
difference is?
Yeah,
If
but they were
buts and
close to make they
maybes.
were close
We
to making a
won.
Champions League final
Chelsea
as well.
won.
I mean,
Yeah, but
If
you
Roma
didn't.
had
You were close, but
yeah,
you just
exactly. But
didn't.
for
You
me,
lost
like
in the
even making it to the
semifinal.
semifinal is more impressive than Chelsea's run because it was done with less
So
tools.
Roma making it to the semifinals of the Champions League of that season is more impressive than 2011, 2012 Chelsea winning the Champions League.
Yes.
That's just an insane. I'm not even gonna. Yeah, sure. All right. I just think that's an insane statement, and I think you
Yeah,
know that it's wrong, but it's
no,
okay.
no. I mean, it's just you just have to like consider all the factors and not just like look at it through the lens of like, oh, like
You
what an
said the
iconic
Chelsea
moment, like the
win was like the
Drogba
second biggest
crown with the
upset
Champions League
win.
final. Yeah,
No,
I said
I
it was
didn't
an
do
upset
that. I
win.
talked about the entire game as a whole and
I mean, I
every
put them
win.
fourth. That's pretty good. Like fourth in the top 10 of
The
all time
Barcelona
clubs.
upset, Napoli, Bayern Munich. I mean, I all right. But I guess winning against Barca and then losing to Liverpool, sure. All right.
Yeah, I mean, again, like you have to consider the context. But yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, I definitely
thanks
have to
for
consider the
watching. It got a
context.
bit heated at the end, but we'll let the comments decide who was right, I think. I think I made some pretty clear arguments for Roma. And yeah, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching, guys.